We are so honored and happy to have Player One Podcast here to broadcast, I believe, their first live podcast in front of an audience.
We never even met each other until 2 days ago.
Look at that.
Yeah,
there you go. So thank you guys so much. Again, not to harp on it too much, but these guys are absolutely my favorite podcast of all time. It is true. They're what got me inspired to do podcasting. That is the absolute truth. These guys have been at it for 10 years. They are veterans and they are hardcore game guys. So as the day goes forth, you guys have any video game questions or anything, seek them out, chat them up. I'm sure they will be pretty much locked in the game room all day anyway.
Yes, indeed. Pretty much.
Yeah. So without further ado, put your hands together. Player One Podcast, everybody.
All right. Cue intro music. Hello and welcome to episode 568 of the Player One Podcast.
That's a big number.
Yeah, Saturday, September 23rd, 2017, live from Scoopfest 17. I'm your host, Chris Johnston. With me, as always, from Canada, a man who's had so many kids, he almost has his own pit crew, Mr. Greg Seward.
It's a hockey team.
No,
we're trying to build a hockey team. Hello.
Pit crew. And over here to my right, a man who once considered a job as an aerosol cheese sommelier, Mr. Phil Theobald.
A man loves his aerosol cheese. What can I say? Thank you.
Sure does.
Thank you, Chris.
And joining me from the great state of California, over here on my left, a guy who would live in VR if he didn't have to leave behind his physical PlayStation Vita collection, Mr. Ethan Einhorn.
Hey there. I could be playing SteamWorld Dig 2 right now, but I'm here with you, so you're welcome.
Yes, and we're glad to have you. And secret guest, special fifth chair on this special episode, a guy fresh off a stint on the Antiques Roadshow, Mr. Mike Phillips.
Right. That's absolutely true.
That is true. Look it up on YouTube, folks.
And it's not because I was the antique, even though obviously in this scenario,
you are the antique of our show.
Pretty much.
True.
Yes.
Yep. But we're also old. So yeah, I'm assuming that a lot of Scoops probably haven't listened to the show, so maybe we should.
Don't blame you.
We don't blame you at all. Yeah, so I thought we'd start with a little bit of background just on us. I worked with these guys here on this side.
They
not Mike.
when you move your hand down by your belly, there's a big table, and they're down below us. So you need to
project.
When you do a lot of movement with your arm underneath the table.
I work with these
guys.
Sorry. Everybody but Mike, we worked together.
There we go.
Back in the late.
Jesus, here, Mike.
We'll take care of you later.
Mike's the eye candy.
Yeah, we worked together on video game magazines back in the day. Sendai and Ziff Davis, Electronic Gaming Monthly, Game Now, and 11 years ago, we were all out of the industry. We had left the magazines, and I started the show with
Some of us
Greg.
got deported.
Greg got deported back to Canada, and we started the show as kind of a way to keep in touch on Skype, and we thought we were going to do like 3 episodes. We were using SOCOM headsets that came with a PlayStation 2 game to record early on, and 568 weeks later, here we are doing a live show at Scoopfest, so that's pretty awesome. Me personally, I've also been a producer for video games. Since 2007, I worked at Adult Swim. I don't know if anybody out here has played Robot Unicorn Attack.
Yeah! There we go.
Well, I didn't actually make that game, but I helped the guy who made it.
I know the guy who does.
I know the guy who does, and I helped pay for that. Not with my own money, with corporate money, but that was a lot of fun. I worked on Headlander, Pocket Morty's, Rick and Morty fans, that mobile game. So that's basically me. Greg, you wanna?
I come from a small town in Canada.
We're going back.
Ever since the EGM days, I went back and got into game development. Did a couple of stints at different developers. Worked on games like the Madden series, Elite Dangerous, Robotech Invasion, if anyone's a Robotech fan. And I'm currently the director of game development at Red Space up in Bedford, Nova Scotia. We do a bunch of games that people here probably haven't played. They're all about Paw Patrol and Sunny Day and primary school stuff. But I love it. It's great.
Cool. Phil.
I worked again at EGM and various magazines with these guys. I also, anyone familiar, video game nerds out there, with the magazine Nintendo Power? Yeah. You know Nintendo Power died a couple years ago? I was there when it died. So I helped bury your childhood
How many magazines
memories.
have you killed?
I've killed, geez, what? I was there when Game Now died. I kind of rode GameSpy, that website, sort of
Till
out
it
to the
died,
sunset. And I killed Nintendo Power.
Poison.
These days, I work in marketing for a video game company that technically part of my deal when I got hired at this company was that I'm really not supposed to talk about where I work on the show.
Fight Club.
But, you know, if I drop a few hints, you might be able to catch them all. If, you know. So, there you go.
Digimon.
I work at the Digimon company.
So, yeah, I'm Ethan, and after working with these guys in the magazines, I spent 12 years over at Sega. Helped bring stuff like Super Monkey Ball to iPhone, helped westernize Sonic for Sonic Boom. Sorry about that. They've nicely course-corrected with Sonic Mania. And from there, ended up jumping into VR, where I've proudly helped sell hundreds of copies of games.
I don't do any of that shit. I was a listener to the show and insinuated myself onto the show and then disappeared for a while, and a few years later insinuated myself onto their first live show.
There you go.
How that worked out.
Yes.
But you did a podcast called The Fanboys Lunchcast for
I
a
did
long
do that.
time.
Yep. Up
which,
to 8 people listened to that. So.
yeah, I was one of them.
4 of them are right here.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, I know in this day and age, it's very hard to find a handful of white guys on the internet who are willing to share their opinions about video games. But leave it to Matt and Mattingly to find them and drag them out to Vegas.
Speaking of Vegas,
Yes.
we we've been here a few days.
Few years, yeah.
Few
Few days.
Actually, the last time we recorded together live was my wedding in Vegas
Yeah, that's true.
7 years 2010.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got married at the Mandalay Bay. But we have been, doing Vegas stuff for the last few days while we've been here.
Yeah, we sat in your hotel room and ate caramel apples and played Mario Kart.
That's right.
That was our Vegas stuff.
Viva.
Yeah.
And you dragged us to White Castle.
I did. Well, of course I did, because I'm from the Midwest, where White Castle is like the place to go when you want to poop. And I figured,
It worked.
why not poop in Vegas while I'm here? So we did that.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Oh, it swimmingly went right through. That's good. The pipes.
We were probably the only ones there that weren't drunk, like getting hangover food.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
I'm sure it tastes better that way.
It probably does. Yeah. Then we went to Blackout Dining in the Dark,
Blackout Dining in the Dark.
which
Did you guys hear of this place? Yeah,
It's
right
awesome.
over by
Go.
the Rio.
Yeah, you got to go.
Yeah, it's
especially if you have somebody in your party who's very anxious about texture of
Food.
food.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
So the gimmick of this place, and we'll talk about video games. I swear.
Yeah.
I swear. We got like an hour and 10 minutes to kill, so we'll get there. Don't worry. But the gimmick of this place, for those who don't know, is they lead you into this restaurant, and it is pitch black. They have they no lights are on. You can't see anything. You got the hands on the shoulders as the.
We would do that anyway.
Yeah, of course. The servers all wear infrared goggles to guide you to the tables, and they sit you down and they bring out a 6-course meal, and they don't tell you anything what you're eating, and they actually give you they sit you down in the chairs and they give you directions. They're like, okay, if you feel your plate at the 6 o'clock location on your plate, you may feel a skinny, tubular, crusty item that you can stab with your fork and bring up to you, and that's exactly what they did.
I love being served
that's
a
great.
skinny, tubular, crusty item.
Yes.
Always stab with your fork.
And you eat this, and then they don't tell you what it is you're eating, and after you leave, when they drag you back out to the foyer, they show you the menu at that point. And these guys are all like, okay, yeah, let's go. And because I eat like a 7-year-old, where it's White Castles and Pop-Tarts and
Aerosol
shit.
cheese.
And aerosol cheese. And I get super, super anxious around food and textures, and I don't know what I'm eating. I was sitting there, and it was great, because in the dark, they can't see my tears. But
To be fair, anything that was not an Oreo was going to be a new experience.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Texture, flavor,
what?
anything.
For
It's a
the
good thing there
record-
have been extensions of that brand,
Yeah.
different flavors of Oreos.
That's the thing,
Otherwise,
yeah.
You wouldn't know what food
know
tastes like
Oreo.
otherwise.
I've had the watermelon Oreos. I've had the apple pie Oreos. So
What
don't
you've never
say.
had is a watermelon or an apple.
Why eat just in watermelon when I can eat it in Oreo form?
science
That's
has made it
that's
better.
like two foods at once. So yeah, I'm sitting there the whole time freaking the hell out about, and even when it comes to, and I'm like touching my food, they can't see it, but here I am like fingering my food, trying to feel like.
Well,
It was the tubular
No,
object.
tubular objects, you know, yeah. And even when it came to something like there one, I'm going to spoiler alert for anyone going there. At one point, they're going to give you a salad, and it's just a salad. It's lettuce and cucumbers and shit. And I'm eating that, and it's like I like salad. I got no problem with salad, but I'm scared to death because it's like, okay, that's lettuce, that's fine. And I'm like, in my next bite, am I going to get a mushroom? Because I really, really dislike mushrooms, and I'm just scared to death the whole time. And I come out
with my kids.
and
It was
I'm
fantastic.
oh,
watching
you guys had a great time.
I saw your silhouette. I couldn't see anything but Phil's white silhouette.
You could see, yeah.
Yeah, I'm nice and pale.
He's so pale.
And
And
they
he's just
guys-
the whole thing is like this.
They
Yeah,
didn't make
the whole
it
time.
easy for us, but we didn't make it easy for them. The poor woman at the front counter, just before we went in, I said with a poker face, in the dark, I startle very easily, and I have panic screams. So,
And she was like, really?
yeah, and she had a look of
bought
concern
it,
on her
yeah.
face, like I was going to
Yeah.
fuck up a whole night for every diner.
you should have prearranged with the waiter to you guys get the standard 6 courses, but every time they come out in front of Phil, they peel back the cellophane on a Lunchable. This place is amazing.
You know what? Even then, I would have been scared. This feels like an Oreo. It feels like a chilled Oreo, but
Baloney.
what the hell if I bite into it and it's a chicken heart or something? I don't know.
The best part of the night though is because the whole point is that you're sitting there and you're trying to kind of figure out what you're eating, right? And it's nothing weird.
No, they
But,
didn't serve you anything like.
But like we're going around
If
the
you're a normal
table and
person.
I'm saying like I taste there's a little bit of like jalapeno in this and CJ's like yeah it might be like a potato or crab cake or something and Phil's like I'm not touching anything. We get to Ethan, all you hear is deadpan. I lost my fork. It's pitch black.
And now I have lost
And
my
we're
fork.
dying. There are other people there that are barely speaking to each other. We're sitting at the table just dying laughing. I lost my fork.
And the waiters are really proud of the food, and they're excited to see what you're thinking it is. And I was so tempted to say, 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese.
Yeah.
But
No.
Oh, none of that.
Yeah. So you want to talk about
So
video
go.
games?
You should go to that place.
Yeah,
It's
you
great.
should go. You
It's
should
great.
go, unless you have
And to invite Phil.
food-based anxiety. In which case,
No, especially you should drag
Okay,
someone.
yeah, drag
who has
someone there.
food-based-
Or if you randomly scream in the dark. You don't want to go there either.
yeah.
Yes. All right. Should we talk about video
let's
games?
talk about video. We've wasted enough time.
All right, so you may know this, you may not know this, but Nintendo has a Super NES Classic thing coming out this next Friday. It includes 21 games from the Super Nintendo that came out in the 90s, and everyone's excited about it. The pre-orders went up and sold out and all that. And we wanted to talk about the Super Nintendo, our memories of the Super Nintendo that launched back in August of '91 in the U.S.
How many people here played Super Nintendo? Yeah, okay,
right,
yeah.
we got some
We
fans.
can't. The hootin' it works better than the raising. I don't know why I raised my hand because I can't see shit out there.
Yeah, it is.
So
dark.
the hootin' works great. So okay, we got some hoots.
Okay,
The '90s kids will remember the Super Nintendo. What?
90s kids.
CJ's finding
so what-
his. Hang
what-
on, he's finding his next script.
Yeah,
right
go ahead.
No,
Read your script there,
Well,
buddy.
no, I wanted to say which games were on the,
Oh,
the
okay, go ahead,
Classic
go
as
ahead,
a
go ahead.
kind of jumping off point, and they really put together a fantastic list.
It
of,
is. It's really quite
if you're a
nice.
'90s kid at all, you're gonna want one of these things. So, Contra 3: The Alien Wars, Donkey Kong Country, Earthbound, Final Fantasy 3.
Yep.
F-Zero, Kirby Superstar, Kirby's Dream Course, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
There you go. Best
Mega
Zelda
Man,
game.
Mega Man X, Secret of Mana, Star Fox, the unreleased Star Fox 2.
Yep.
You have to finish a level in the original Star Fox and it unlocks, which is awesome. Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, Super Castlevania 4, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. Super Ghouls and Ghosts,
Greg really likes Super Castlevania 4, everybody.
Super Mario Kart, Super Mario RPG, Super Mario World, Super Metroid. A lot of games with Super in the title. Super Punch Out,
Super
and
Nintendo.
Yoshi's Island.
Yoshi's Island.
21
Super Mario
games.
World 2.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yoshi's Island, best side-scrolling platformer ever made.
And never available on a virtual console.
That is true. That is also true.
Because it has a special chip inside that made it.
Yep.
Just like Star Fox.
So it's all those games. It's what, $80?
$80.
$80 for
two
that?
controllers.
Or $250 if you're in Canada.
Yeah.
Much cheaper than the original Super
Or
Nintendo.
$400 if you can't find one and have to go to a scalper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Reggie said don't go to a scalper, though.
Reggie, the
Reggie says
president
relax.
of Nintendo.
That's right, Reggie, the president of Nintendo. So yeah, when the Super NES launched back in '91, it was $199.99. I did not get one at launch. I skipped the first year of that. I rented one from the local video store back when there were video stores.
Yeah, of course.
You may remember. You put out like a $100 deposit down.
Oh, yeah, they made you like,
You get Super Mario World.
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing. And then 2 days later, back off to the store.
Yes.
But what about you, Phil? What's your Super Nintendo story?
I skipped out on the Super Nintendo right away at launch because I was a Sega Genesis kid growing up. Yeah, thank you. Yes. And so I had my Genesis, and I did not have the budget at the time. I just started working at a video game store. There was an old video game store called Babbage's. If everyone remembers Babbage's back then. Here's how old I am. When I was working at Babbage's, we still had Commodore 64 games in the store that we were selling. So that's actually
Bruce Lee.
Yeah, some Infocom games. I was yeah. But yeah, I was just starting working there, so I skipped out. What finally sold me on the Super Nintendo was, I think, about a year later when Street Fighter 2 was coming out, and then The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. I was super excited about that, so that was when I broke down.
Okay, where'd you get it from?
I shoplifted it from work.
Oh.
Yeah. That's not true.
You resealed it.
I don't know if my old boss is a scoop.
Is over on that.
Oh, is it really? Okay, then that, yeah.
Totally fine.
No, I picked it up from work and got my Street Fighter, got my Zelda, and I picked up, there was a game called Legend of the Mystical Ninja.
I knew we would go there.
Yeah.
I love my Legend of the Mystical. It's an old game from Konami where you were a little ninja guy running around beating up.
It's a great game.
It's a really great game. And yeah, so that was my Super Nintendo story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, you wanna?
Sure. So I'm older than all
Mike
of
was
you.
30 when it came out.
Close. That meant at the time I had a job and I worked at a video game store, but not a big chain video game store, an independent video game store that was a local owned and operated thing. And we actually bought a Super Famicom. With Pilot Wings and Super Mario World.
The
Japanese version. So we had it before it came out in the U.S. and I got to play it a lot then, which convinced me to buy it when it came out day one, basically. But it at the store that we were at, it was the same thing. You could rent the system and rent the games, and so I got to take it home and play with the Japanese version before it came out, and got halfway through Super Mario World before I had to take it back, and then waited for the U.S. version to come out. But pretty much fell in love with it right away.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Nice. Ethan?
Yeah, so the first job I ever had was at a Dairy Queen, and I saved all my money to get a Genesis. And I bought that from the local mall, had a software, etc., and eventually traded up both my console and my job by going to that same software, etc., getting a job there, and then using the discount to get a Super Nintendo. In addition to the Genesis that I had.
And then quit.
No, I ended up picking up, I remember it really fondly. It was a year after the machine came out, but I got Link to the Past with it, and Castlevania 4 and Contra 3. So,
Nice.
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Is my turn?
How
Okay.
about
The
you,
Sega
Greg?
fanboy's turn.
Yeah.
What's that?
The Sega
fanboy's turn. I was a Sega kid as well, but I was actually a Nintendo kid first, and then I got sick of waiting for the Super Nintendo, so I ended up buying a Genesis. But my best friend was a Nintendo kid, and his parents bought him a Super Nintendo the day it came out. But we were kind of in a feud at the time, so when I heard he had a Super Nintendo, I made up with him real quick. And, to the point that it was so funny because I went up to his house like the next day. He had Super Castlevania 4. No, that wasn't the next because that came out a little bit later. But he had Mario World, obviously, and I went up. I think we hadn't spoken in like 3 weeks at that point, and it got to the point where one of my other friends pulled me aside and said, "Dave's pretty sure you made up with him just so you could come play Super Nintendo." Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
But no, I didn't buy one until years later. I bought one when Final Fantasy 3 came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned like you wait so long for this thing to come out. And in video game magazines at that time, they would show like pictures scanned from Japanese magazines. We knew it was in development, but really, like, from the Japanese release to the U.S. release, it's like not even a year. But
it was really quick.
Back then, like, time seemed to go slower.
Well,
Come on already!
Of course.
Like we were talking about a few episodes ago, Police Academy movies, I didn't even realize they came out on a yearly basis.
Oh, yeah.
It just seemed like I was always anticipating that next one.
And as I said, also, I was very aware of that because that was my birthday every year. Going to see Police Academy.
Your parents hated you. Dragging you to a Police Academy movie every year. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I kind of scammed my way into a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I was still 6'3".
This guy had
Obviously.
balls when he was a kid.
That's true.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
don't
tell
have
that
balls
story.
anymore. But wait, okay, no, that's a different story entirely.
They got a weird initiation process at Adult Swim games.
Actually, that was course number 5 at the Blackout Diner.
They were fried though, so it was all right.
It's fine.
It's fine.
And
This
honestly,
is
there
why
were
I
3
touched them
balls in
before
front.
I ate.
Yeah, so the Consumer Electronics Show was in Chicago. I lived in Chicago at the time.
Explain what the
there.
Consumer Electronics Show is.
It's this awesome magical land where
Yeah.
they show off high definition television way before you could buy it, and they showed off. They had
Porn.
And Ron Jeremy's
and
latest.
porn too.
Yeah.
In Vegas, they had the porn part, but in Chicago they didn't have that. But they would show video game systems kind of as a toy thing, like electronic
Right.
toy thing. It's
Right.
kind of why it's a part of that show.
These days, there's the big video game trade show, which is E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo. This predates E3.
It does.
All video game stuff was shown off at the Consumer Electronics Show.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and I happened to sneak my way in when I was 13.
Yeah. How did you do that
Because
again?
I was
'Cause you were
6'3".
6'3".
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look 20.
I looked 20, yeah. In fact, a friend of mine who also went, who was also the same age, he got his badge taken away because they checked his ID.
Oh, really?
And because I had a media badge, I went down to security and convinced them that this guy, my friend, was my photographer.
So how?
And that they should give him his badge back. They didn't ask me how old I was, because, again, I'm a monster.
Well, how does a 13-year-old kid get a media badge to get into a giant electronic industry trade show?
You can, printing places will print business cards.
That's how most of us got at E3 the first couple of years too.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
But Nintendo had a press kit, and they had a phone number on there for media inquiries, and I called it, and I told them that I had spoken with them at the show, and that they had said I could get a review unit, and they sent me a Super Nintendo.
Was that true?
Oh my God.
No, I had not spoken with them at all, but it worked out. They sent me a huge box with a Super Nintendo, and of course we had a electrical thing, and it zonked out the first day that I played
Electrical
it.
thing.
Yeah, like one of them surges.
One of those searches.
Yeah.
You're a video game producer right now, and you're talking about electrical things.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, but so that was when Link to the Past came out.
Okay.
I got Link to the Past on Super Nintendo.
So your scams are always my favorite things because we were all working in Chicago since we were big nerds. We go to Dave & Buster's like every Friday night to play DDR, which you can see does a lot of good.
Not anymore.
Yeah. It was a while ago. But anyway, because that place is licensed, you'd have to, show ID. And although CJ is like 7 feet tall, he also looks like he's about 12. So, especially if he's clean shaven.
True.
So we went there one night, and this was while we were working on the magazine, and he'd forgotten his ID.
No, it had been. I had gotten a ticket.
You got okay.
So
right.
I had a ticket, but no ID.
But no ID,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So he couldn't get in. The guy wouldn't let us in. So CJ's solution to this was to run over to the nearest bookstore, buy the latest issue of EGM,
Buy the magazine with my picture in it.
and bring back and show the picture. Brought it in and pointed at the picture, and it worked.
But it
He
works.
actually
Guy let us in.
pulled the "Don't you know who I am?"
Yeah, you know who I am. Just casually flipping through the magazine.
I
in
write
front of the
about
security
video
guard.
games for a living. I don't know if you know that, so let me into your little arcade.
Here's a picture of a nerd. I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
Let me in. I know it's 21 and up, but I'm only going to drink water because I'm playing DDR.
Yeah, I gotta stay hydrated. That, by the way, it does not work anymore. You cannot just call up Nintendo and say, "Yeah, I talked to someone. Please send me
No,
shit."
that's true.
They will check your
Only the
credentials.
early 90s.
Yeah,
was when that worked.
Yeah, that was a magical time.
Yeah.
It was a good era for scams. I had a brother who ran a I'm not going to tell you all of them. But
Okay.
I had a brother who had a computer store at the time, and it meant he had a shrink wrap machine.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, you buy a game,
Yeah.
play it for a little while,
Okay.
done with
Reshrink
it, reshrink it.
Did you?
Toys R Us.
Now,
This is why Toys R Us is going bankrupt.
yeah, exactly. Because
It's sort of a delayed effect.
all those scams you pulled in the 90s.
Basically.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Thanks for killing my childhood.
Yeah, I had a friend that was a little more nefarious with that, though, where he would use a shrink wrap machine because he had access to it. But he would take some shit game he had for Super Nintendo, like Home Alone, right? And so he would.
See, that's wrong.
Yeah, he'd trade back in Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but it had Home Alone.
Oh,
But
so
that hurts another person like me. I was
Yeah.
only interested in destroying the business.
so you know,
The faceless corporation, not people.
Exactly.
we lived in the same area, and I worked at Babbage's also,
Yeah.
and around the Super Nintendo time, and there was a guy who was returning Street Fighter 2, and I'm not lying about this actually, and we of course were told at a certain point to just open shrink-wrapped games, like if it
Yeah.
seemed like it wasn't factory sealed.
Because enough
So
jackasses were putting Home Alone copies
right.
in there. Yeah.
So I opened it up, and the guy bolted out of the store. It was like a copy of Mario is Missing
Okay.
on the Super Nintendo.
No, not even a good Mario game. The educational Mario game.
The educational.
Mario is missing.
Well, sometimes on the other side of the aisle, though, when you're not the customer but actually working there, things can get a little bit skeevy. We decided, because we had this pre-order program that we really had to push, that we would place bets and find like the crappiest games and see like who could get the highest pre-orders in the store for them. So I don't know if anyone's heard of a game called Spanky's Quest.
And it's not the one you're thinking. It's not the one you do at home
So
by yourself.
the pot for that got to be about $100, and so we were all fiercely fighting over who could get the most pre-orders. And there were different strategies. One of the guys said, this game is made by the maker of Donkey Kong, and in fact, it is an extension of the Donkey Kong series, which was a lie, right? To try to get people to pre-order. The most successful one, though, was a guy who actually just said, the name really does says it all. The name says it all. It really is about a monkey who vigorously masturbates, and Nintendo doesn't know this, so it's going to be pulled off the store shelves like right after it comes out. So get it; it's going to be a huge collector's item, right? And that guy got the pot. That worked, yes.
I love that the most effective selling point was convincing someone that the game was about a masturbating monkey.
Yes, yeah. Well, and
That's
then
the best you could do.
Then it got more brazen, though, because people then started making up products to get pre-orders on, right? And one was a controller that had all sorts of novelty controllers. But a guy actually got 3 pre-orders on what he called the Penetrator, which was a controller that you sit on to control, so it's hands-free.
That's not Nintendo licensed.
But he always said, but you can't return it.
Ethan, talking about Spanky's Quest, and I don't know that I actually have some Spanky's Quest trivia for you.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how many people can say that.
Exclusive.
Yeah. And this is actually true. The old magazines, the print ads for Spanky's Quest, had a little call-out bubble on the ads. Do you know who officially approved and who endorsed the game Spanky's Quest?
No.
There is a fictional character. That Spanky's Quest was endorsed by a fictional character, Archie, of Archie Comics fame.
All right.
So your masturbating monkey and Jughead have something in common. So,
Well,
Okay then.
I mean, who hasn't? Well, never mind. Betty and Veronica.
oh, I thought you were saying
Not too
Jughead.
shabby. Well,
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with
Dude loves
Archie,
burgers,
Jughead.
man.
different times, different needs.
Yeah, I understand.
Gets lonely.
So maybe
when
we
you
should
talk.
talk about our favorite Super Nintendo games,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because there were a lot of them.
Sonic doesn't count.
You could just read that Super Nintendo Classic.
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, pretty much.
They
cover the
put
most-
together a
But,
pretty
but
great
games
list.
that were not on that list, for me, Mario All-Stars. Like, I love
That's
that game.
cheating.
It's cheating.
That is cheating.
Well,
Mario All-Stars, for those who do not know, it was a collection that came out for Super Nintendo. It has the first three, I hold up 2 fingers. The first 3 Super Mario games on there, and then the Japanese version of Mario 2, which is completely different than the Mario 2 that we got over here in the States. And they
arguably
have
worse.
no, it's significantly
terrible
worse.
game.
It's not as good as the our Mario 2, but it's got like fancy graphics and fancy sound effects and everything.
Yeah.
So that kind of is cheating.
Okay, I get. So I can't say Mario All Stars.
No, that's cheating.
All right, Tetris Attack.
Tetris Attack, which we saw
has nothing to do with Tetris whatsoever. Except they borrowed the license.
They slapped the name. They took a Japanese game called Panel de Pong,
which is on the Japanese version of the Super Famicom.
Which is on the Japanese SNES Classic, and they slapped the Tetris name on there. And actually, last night when we were here for the big festival last night, we saw some people playing it in the
they got Tetris Attack back on the game.
So that is an outstanding puzzle game.
It is.
And we played a hell of a lot of that when we were all working together on the magazine. That was one of the big things that kept us from actually getting our work done.
Yeah. So that might be my favorite game that is not on.
I can dig
Classic.
that.
Do you have any that?
Well, I'm gonna.
You can't say Super Mario All Stars.
I'm not gonna say Super. I'm not gonna say Super Mario. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this full circle. I'm gonna do a callback, as they say.
He's gonna steal mine. He's about to steal mine.
Am I really?
Yeah.
As a callback, as Paul taught me in the comedy biz, Legend of the Mystical Ninja.
Son of a bitch.
There you go. better start thinking of something new to say.
Damn.
Again,
I got some notes here.
Now, Mystical Ninja was just a kind of side-scrolling platformer game. Again, it's made by Konami, who makes the Castlevania games, makes the Contra games. They make excellent, excellent games. And it's just a platformer, side-scrolling type thing. It's got tons of variety in the stages. There's places where you can go into carnivals, and they have little maze games. You can play a little mini game of Gradius, which was an excellent Konami shooter that came out. It's just a fantastic game with a really weird sense of humor.
And a really weird cover too, right? In the U.S., didn't it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how many people
Konami
didn't
didn't market.
It had like a
this
weird
game
kind
very
of
well.
Well, because it's one of those games where it has a very kind of Japanese anime style aesthetic, but this was well before Americans knew what anime was. So American well, not that. Well, yeah, but no one really, Yeah. There was not manga sections in bookstores like there are today and stuff like that. So they would not use the Japanese artwork. So they had like some sort of weird photorealistic painting of this cartoon ninja. And the main characters in that game, the lead character is named in the Japanese original, he's called Goemon, and he's based on a legend of a Japanese thief. And his sidekick is another thief called Epsumaru. And because the 90s were a super racist time, they changed the names to Kid Ying and Dr. Yang. So
you're going for a B movie.
Good old-timey 90s racism.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike, what's your favorite SNES game?
I'm going to go back to scams.
Okay. Yeah, please do.
So the other function of working at the game store that I did, it wasn't very well trafficked.
Okay.
It attracted, people that look like this.
You know what? More or less. Might not have had the traffic because you were always pulling scams.
Well, maybe. And one day a guy came in with a little contraption that he put on our Super Nintendo, and it was called a Game Doctor.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And it was to pirate games. So you could plug a Super Nintendo cartridge on it. It had a 3.5-inch floppy drive. You put a disc in, and it would copy games over. That was interesting enough. But what was really interesting is this guy was able to get games months in advance.
Okay.
And so he would come into the store with this thing, and he started getting a little fan club of, adolescent males gathered around him, which was awkward when, we'd all be gathered around this machine, and on the rare occasion that a customer would come in, everyone would quickly turn around and look, and so there's this 30-year-old guy surrounded by 14-year-olds who are suddenly like deer in the headlights. It was all about video
Weird
games.
going on here.
The cool thing about it though is I just got to try a whole bunch of games that either never came over here or were not going to be super popular. Aerobiz and Aerobiz Supersonic. Did you guys ever play?
Those? Yeah.
I didn't play them, but I saw the ads in the magazine that looked like homework. And
it was like a game where you were the owner of an airline, and it was pretty incredible. I got addicted. I was old enough to play those and be interested in them. There was also a pinball game called Jackie Crush Pinball. Do you remember this game?
I own the Japanese version of Jackie Crush Pinball.
So it was a pinball game, but all of the art was sort of like an H.R. Geiger alien-looking, disgusting stuff. Anyway, that was pretty cool too. But my all-time favorite Super Nintendo game is on that list for the Super Nintendo Classic, Super Castlevania 4. Amazing stuff. I still play that game like once a year because it's the best.
I've never played it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I wonder if on the Classic, so one of the shortcomings of the Super Nintendo was the processor speed, and there was tons of slowdown in a lot of those games. And especially in Super Castlevania 4, the slowdown was terrible. Does anybody know if they're going to fix that on the Classic?
I hope
will
they
keep
don't.
it?
I can't imagine they will.
You want that retro feeling. Come on.
You want that game to play like shit, just like you remember it as a kid.
Yeah, so for me, definitely Super Star Wars. And that's one that I'm actually really surprised they didn't get onto the SNES Classic, because they just last year reissued it on Vita and PS4, and it would be such a perfect fit. But that was a hard game that was one of the few that I was able to beat without losing any lives.
Wow.
I got really, really good at that particular game.
Could you do that in the year 2017?
I tried. Not a chance of that.
Funny how our skills atrophy like that.
Yeah, fuck Jawas.
Yeah.
Wow. That was harsh.
That's the name of my erotic fanfic that I'm working on right now, strangely enough.
Fuck Jawas?
It's another class of Jawa.
It's Luke encountered the normal Jawas at first, but then, after hours, he encounters the fuck Jawas. Okay. Did you think of one yet, Greg?
No, but I'm looking at the list here. I'm going to go with White Castle. Oh, wait a minute.
What?
White Castle.
Phil dragged us to White Castle.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll say probably Chrono Trigger. Why not?
That's a great choice.
Chrono Trigger was a great. It is a great choice.
It's
Thank
a
you.
bummer. It's a bummer that's not on the system too.
Yeah. No, Chrono Trigger was great. I mean, it was sort of it was a dream team of developers and artists that came together to work on that, right? I mean, it was sort of the culmination of all the amazing people that worked on the Dragon Quest games and on the Final Fantasy games, all came together to create an incredible RPG. So it would be great if it was on there, but
it's too bad you hated Chrono Cross.
I did 9.5.
Yeah.
So there was for anybody that doesn't know that, like we at EGM we reviewed every game with at least it was 3 when we were by the end. It used to be 4, but it was down to 3, and you would average out the score from 1 to 10, and if it was an average of 8, then it got a silver award. If it was an average of 9, it got a gold, and if it was an average of 10, it got a platinum award. And so there was the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger on the PlayStation 1 called Chrono Cross. I was one of the reviewers on it, and the 2 other reviewers gave it a 10, and I gave it a 9.5. And
how dare you?
Exactly.
You must have hated that game.
In the editorial of the magazine, it actually called out and said, "This game missed out on a platinum because of Greg. Send hate mail too," and it put my company email address up.
Yeah.
And
wait, they actually put your direct email address?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So.
But nobody had email back in that day. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I left the magazine soon after, but for at least 10 years, I was still getting emails from people who were threatening terrible things, like they wanted to murder my dog and they wanted to kill my family. It was just. I don't know.
Well, sometimes with the magazines, things would get in there. Phil used to we worked with Quark, which is an old program. He'd like to put misspellings and things and make things sound naughty, just to see if the copy editor would catch it.
Yeah, of course.
If he
Good
didn't
practice
catch
for
it,
the magazine.
That is a
very dangerous game.
One thing that we came so close to is there was a Capcom game where he changed it to www. He changed the O to a U. So
yeah,
and it almost went through.
Well, that could have. O and U are very. Are they close to each other on a keyboard? They might be. I don't.
No.
Yes, they are. It could have been a typo. So there we go.
Well, we've talked about good games. Maybe we should talk about the bad games. And one of my favorite games.
You know what? Real quick, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to let you finish. But I'm going to shout. I'm going to call out my second favorite because there's a game that if I should have let you have, Mystical Ninja, so I could have said that SimCity, the Super Nintendo version of SimCity, is outstanding. If you like boring as hell city building simulators, SimCity is magnificent.
Can we give an honorable mention to Zombies Ate My Neighbors?
That's a good game.
That's a fun game.
That's a good game.
Yeah. Especially the Super Nintendo.
That was a joint project between Konami and LucasArts. Yeah. So go ahead.
All right, let's talk about the bad games now.
Okay.
That we loved. Because as a kid, you get a game for birthday or Christmas. You kind of you have to love it because it's the only thing you're going to get.
Yeah,
right. So I was sick one day from school for a couple days actually, and my mom got me Clay Fighter. Super Nintendo, which you just leave it on the title screen and you get joy.
Great
coming through your
theme
song.
That had the
theme song.
Clay Fighters, Clay Fighters.
Yeah,
that's right. A little digitized voice theme song there. Yeah.
You can be Mr. Taffy, and there's like the Elvis.
It was a fighting game.
Like Street Fighter, but not as
well. It was because it was hot on the heels of like Mortal Kombat, which had the digitized people. So the gimmick with this was that it was all claymation figures.
That's right. Bad Mr. Frosty, right?
Bad Mr. Frosty. Yeah, the snowman. You had the the Elvis guy in the first one.
The Elvis guy was in the first one.
You had Elvis and Mr. Taffy. It was like kind of a Gumby style character.
Mike's falling asleep.
Yeah, it's a terrible game.
Sorry, what?
No, but I mean,
Clay Fighter. I mean, come on.
You can always say it could be worse. It could be Wayne's World, the game.
Did you get Wayne's World the game?
We played it. When we were at the game store, when we didn't want parents dropping their kids off to the arcade, as the parents would actually call it, we'd put in Thomas the Tank Engine and Wayne's World in the two kiosks, and people would
fantastic.
Drive kids
away. It was
away.
definitely the era of terrible licensed games.
Oh, yes.
That has more or less evaporated at this point, but back then there was a licensed game for everything, and they were all miserable.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite terrible licensed games was Lawnmower Man. Did you ever play Lawnmower Man?
Yeah.
That game was fucking great, terrible, great.
You mean it wasn't just like the movie?
Not exactly.
No, great,
it had
terrible,
like
great.
a weird side-scrolling platformer that was rotoscoped animation, but the animation threw everything off. You just sort of slid all over the place, and then it would switch to these 3D like VR worlds where you had these two stupid-looking hands sticking out, and it used Mode 7 a lot, and it was really bad.
It was bad.
I played it an awful lot.
When that came out on VHS, I was working at a video store, and I kid you not, because of a lawsuit, we got these a box of these little black stickers, and we had to put Stephen King's name. We had to cover it with the black stickers on every copy.
Really?
Yeah, because of an agreement between him and
like
New
he didn't
Line
want his
Cinema.
name associated
saw
with
the
the
movie
game.
and didn't
He
want
played
his
the
name.
game and didn't
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, this isn't like Mario. I want a Mario game. There was a bad license game. Back in the 90s, there was a live-action Dennis the Menace movie.
Oh yeah.
If you guys remember Dennis, there's the Dennis the Menace movie starring some kid as Dennis the Menace. Some blonde kid.
It's good casting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they hired a blonde kid for Dennis. And Walter Matthau was Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson.
And this game was just it was a real crappy side-scrolling platformer type game. Dennis is running around the neighborhood or in the house, and the gimmick of the game was that Mr. Wilson was chasing him all over the place because Mr. Wilson hates Dennis the Menace. And the character you're controlling Dennis, and he's just a little cartoon, hand-drawn character. But Mr. Wilson, his body was normal, like again, kind of cartoonishly drawn, but his head was a photorealistic shot of Walter Matthau, and it was huge. It was really disproportionate. But the thing is it wasn't animated at all. So it was just this kind of like Mr. Wilson's body's like the side view, but he's like staring right at the camera with this very angry, disapproving look, just not staring at Dennis as he's chased, but staring at you.
You had to scare the kid.
Yeah, well,
that was playing
like,
it. Cause,
that's like bringing the Dennis the Menace experience into your living room.
But the thing is it didn't even really look. It looked photorealistic, but it didn't look like Walter Matthau. It looked like Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, it kind of did, actually. Kind of did.
That would add to the tension of the game.
Yeah.
repurposed it from another game.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. No, I played mostly Genesis at the time. I mean, there were,
So
Don't talk to me about
Genesis
a lot of crap
were
on
your
this.
shitty Super Nintendo
Yeah,
games.
right.
That checks out.
What about? I mean, any of those licensed games were terrible. I mean, I remember the disappointment of Final Fight and not being able to play two-player.
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then Blockbuster got the
Final
special.
Fight Guy,
Which was still not
or as we
two-player.
called it, Final Fight Gee.
Oh, it was not?
No. There was this arcade beat 'em up type game called Final Fight made by Capcom. They made the Street Fighter games.
Capcom or Capcom? I always get
Was
that.
it Capcom?
Okay.
With
That's the next
with
button.
the U.
Capcom is the next button.
With
Common
the U.
mistake.
And Yeah, the arcade version, the whole kind of gimmick was you could play 2 players at once, and you go around with a buddy beating up all these bad guys. And then they brought it to Super Nintendo, and they took out the 2-player option, and they removed, because you could pick one of 3 different characters in the arcade game, and they took out one of the characters.
Yeah.
So everyone was kind of pissed off at this game because it's like, okay, my favorite character is gone, and I can't play with my buddy. And then, to apologize, air quotes for that, Capcom released a couple months down the road a new version of that game, which you could only get. They didn't sell it retail. You had to go to Blockbuster Video to rent it, and they called it Final Fight Guy, because Guy was the name of the character they had cut out. But what they did was they cut out a different character. You could still only play. You could only pick from 2 characters, and they did not put the 2-player mode back.
All of them were in the Sega
Well,
version.
they just put a digitized version of Walter Matthau's head.
Yeah, and Saddam Hussein.
What game wouldn't benefit from a digitized Walter Matthau head?
I'll tell you one. Ranma 1/2 Hard Battle.
Oh.
As an anime fan back in the 90s,
Right.
we paid $50 for a VHS tape, 2 episodes. I don't know.
Yes, indeed.
You remember that time?
Any anime fans out there? Yeah. Okay, there's a couple.
Yeah.
Couple.
Yeah, that Ranma 1/2 game.
Yeah.
I loved it, even though it was.
It was not a good
crappy game.
Another Street Fighter clone.
Yeah. I'm playing the anime.
That's exactly right.
That's what I would say to myself.
But it was terrible.
My Japanimation.
Yeah, back then it was not anime, it was Japanimation. Because again, the 90s were crazy racist.
True. Thank God we're not racist anymore.
Yeah, we graduated.
We're over that. We're over that. Yeah. We fixed that problem.
Society's moved on from that.
Yeah. Well, I think we should do some tweets here. Well, let's do like 1 tweet and then let's do our outro and spin it that way. What do you think about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Do your thing.
Tweet-a-dee-dee-dee, tweet-a-dee-dee-dee, tweet, 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 tweet.
All right.
As a listener, you get that. Yeah, there you go.
Do you think anyone that listens to this show realizes you're riffing on a song from 1957?
There was actually
when you do that 1950 fucking.
There was a tweet about that.
Yeah.
Someone where to the show where there's like, man, Phil, what was it like that you should monetize that great jingle you came up with for the Twitter section?
Just really into that tweet song.
Someone was really excited about that song I made up for this show.
Yeah.
So
totally blow their mind.
Didn't have the heart to tell him.
Send them a Spotify
I'm
link.
really damn old.
All right, this one's from hacker alias Nameva. I never can get
what? Okay.
This guy's name is. He says, "What game or franchise would you like turned into an extravagant Vegas show? Cirque du Mario, anyone?"
Oh. It's a good quote.
Dennis the Menace.
Yeah. Everyone
with a Saddam Hussein look away.
Everyone wearing big Saddam Hussein masks, like Mardi Gras masks, like the real huge ones.
Yeah.
That could be good.
I don't know. Lester the Unlikely.
I'd be up for Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay.
Is it
was never good.
Well, with a Casino Night Zone.
Yeah, Casino Night Zone.
Right.
Yeah, you know what games would actually work is pretty much anything from that game company, right? Flower, Journey. If you Abzu, those would all be extravagant Vegas shows.
Yeah, these are.
I can see that.
Modern games. You're throwing modern games.
Oh, are we supposed to choose only Super Nintendo?
No.
What about Neurodancer for the 3DO? I feel like that would be a choice.
The NC-17.
Now you're speaking my
language.
The
striptease game for the 3DO. That's good.
This guy, speaking of striptease games.
But where's this going?
Oh, wait, I know where this is going. You know where this is going. This guy, Sega, the good folks at Sega put out years ago a video game system called the Sega Saturn that nobody played.
Except for him.
I mean, this guy played it. But you imported a game from Japan.
The Yakuin Special.
The Yakuin Special. And what does Yakuin Special translate to?
Well, I don't know what it translates to, but the game is strip, rock, paper, scissors.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's rock, paper. It's all the excitement of rock, paper, scissors.
Extremely exciting.
In video game form, but with the very slim chance you might see some titty.
Yeah. And the best thing was because I seem to remember you playing this, and the best thing was he was getting so pissed because you couldn't win.
Right, the game was the odds were stacked against
treats. I'm not going to see my boobies.
Here's what I want to know. When you lost a round,
did you strip? Yes. Yes.
Did you lose an article of clothing?
Fully
only
interactive.
fair.
You really want to
gotta
immerse
commit.
yourself into the full rock, paper, scissors
Yeah.
experience.
Not when these guys are around.
Okay.
But yeah, and it was such that I thought the game was cheating that I actually got a utility for the PC that would see. I had to prove.
You wanted to see that.
prove that they were on there. And
I bet the titties aren't even on the disc.
This was before internet
Life
porn
is
was
so
free and
much
easy to
better
get.
now, when you can just open your phone and see boobs if you want,
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
having to battle rock, paper, scissors to see
those
pixelated
video
breasts.
files are on there. That's a funny game, though. It's terrible, really. Like when you
It's a funny game.
when you throw out what you're doing, it's like this big. It's Lawnmower Man, like hands that come down. It's very frightening. But then you might see something.
There you go. You want to take a
Not a
question from the
bits.
crowd?
Sure.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Does anyone have
Yeah,
a question about video games or CJ's masturbatory habits?
There's somebody with a really sequin jacket over there with a hand up. I can't really.
On that titty, was that 16-bit titty or?
16-bitty?
Oh, 16-bitty?
32-bit.
Yeah, was that
32-bitty.
16-bit titty? No, it was 32.
That was 32 bits.
Oh.
That was all
CD-ROM.
That's why he
higher
worked so hard
definition.
for it.
Well, it was actually, it wasn't like cartoon hand drawn. These were like actual
Video
like,
files.
Like so
Live
it
action.
was legitimate boobs.
That's much better than like trying to catch when the wavy lines on the adult channels would kind of clear up for a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stealing satellite signal from your neighbor.
Oh
to
yeah,
see
we
some
did all that too.
Cloudy
right
porn.
here.
Okay, so I love video games, but I only play N64 Tetris.
Okay.
That's the only game that I found that I really.
Is that
I like.
Tetrisphere?
Yeah. Now when you say N64 Tetris, because we're talking, they got Tetrisphere, they got the Disney Tetris,
Just Tetris.
Regular Tetris.
Regular
The
Tetris.
cubes.
new Tetris. There was new Tetris.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Tetris.
So I'm wondering if you can recommend a game that I might branch out to next.
On Nintendo 64, you said?
Well, I have
Just
that
in general.
system, yeah.
Oh,
I have a
okay.
Wii as well. So.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, that's the closest thing.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got.
No,
from
because I'm gonna defend that.
Yeah. Tied
Crossword
that.
puzzles. Can you recommend
The
another
game
activity? How about
is
Scuba
designed to be super
why not?
accessible. It really is.
Okay.
And, it's something that you can pick up and play, and it's the best game on the system. So
Okay, Ethan's wrong.
Okay.
But do you want to...
Strip, rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, that's
really
the
what
only
you
way to
want.
go. And if you get
Well, they
by,
made Pokemon Puzzle League, which is like Tetris
Yeah.
Attack we were talking about
there
earlier.
you go.
That's
Yeah,
a fun
that would be a
puzzle
good
game
one.
on the N64. You'd probably like that a lot.
yeah,
It's fun.
actually, yeah, it's. I mean,
And if not Mario Galaxy.
And if
Yeah.
not Mario.
Yeah.
Puyo Puyo versus Tetris is on basically everything. It was designed specifically to be ported to
yeah, yeah.
everything, and that's great too.
but
Anything new.
we're just sticking. If we just stick with N64, you know what? When you get a chance, go back to the game room over there, hop on one of the Super Nintendo systems, load up Tetris Attack,
Yeah.
play that, realize it's outstanding, and then go home, get on the eBays, buy yourself a copy of Pokemon Puzzle League.
It's getting
Because
expensive.
You're going to remember all
A lot
these
of
instructions?
steps.
Yeah, write this down. Write this down. You're not gonna remember this in a couple days when you get home, but yeah,
Is this being recorded? So maybe
Yes.
yeah.
I could listen to it later.
Yes.
You can listen to it later.
You can find that at playeronepodcast.com on your internets. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a good call. It's a good
Okay.
call. Pokemon Puzzle League is outstanding.
Should we do one
Yours was terrible.
more question and then?
There we go, right over there.
What would you say would be your most valued or valuable game system or game that you own?
Oh,
That's a good one.
That is a good
Most
one.
valuable game or game system we've ever owned.
Do you mean like monetarily or like sort of
Valued or valuable?
valued? Okay, yeah, or valuable.
Valued or valuable? I've got Panzer Dragoon Saga on the Saturn. That's probably a pretty big one.
Yeah.
But working in a video game magazine back in the day, I, would get game creators to sign games occasionally. So those are probably worth something. I got a Wind Waker, Zelda the Wind Waker on GameCube signed by Eiji Aonuma. I need to frame that thing.
who is
Eiji
Eiji
Aonuma is
Like-
the guy who designed, or he's the director of Legend of Zelda the Wind Waker on GameCube.
I had Radiant Silvergun, which is a Japanese-only game for Saturn. I sold it. How much did you buy it for?
You gave me the friend discount at the time. It was like $115, I think.
and
The
what's
game
it
was
worth
worth The game was at the time was worth like 200 bones.
Yeah.
But you sold it to me for 115, and I thanked you, and then I put it on eBay and got. No, I didn't. I still have it.
And for the record, I believe I was the one who told you don't sell that because you will instantly regret it, right?
You did.
I said one of these days you're going to sell that to CJ, and then you're going to be, a couple years from now, you're going to be sitting on a stage in Vegas, pissing and moaning about how you lost your copy of Radiant Silvergun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one I still have, though, that is probably valuable, when I was at Sega, I worked on Sonic Chronicles, which was done by BioWare, and they were really nice, and all the people from the Sega side that worked on it, they gave signed copies of Mass Effect that had, like, all the lead, team members on it. I remember also when we were in the magazines, we were sent a signed copy of EverQuest Adventures from the whole team, but the game was terrible.
Right.
So Phil thought it would be a good idea for us to just send them back a signed copy of the magazine.
Yeah.
Next to the review, that's like a 3-point.
Thank you. I'm going to go a different route as far as not much valuable, but valued for me, actually. I would say my Saturn, my Sega Saturn, and for one reason, because I'm a Sega guy, and that was a great system, but that console helped launch my career. That was the system that I was so passionate about that I felt compelled to go on the internet and start writing reviews and editorials and things like that, and that directly led to me getting hired at Ziff Davis, and I have a career now because of that. So
that's touching.
Thanks, man.
That's
I generally don't collect games. The things that I like, though, were this. I'm going back to scams. When I was able to get my hands on a game that died for some reason, like was never released, so I had at one time Thrill Kill for the PlayStation, which never came out, and various versions of Madden and NBA Live that never came out. But I do have one piece of hardware, which is weird because I don't collect things, but when I was writing reviews for OneUp.com, they sent me a 360 debug unit that had like OneUp stickers on and stuff.
Never sent it back?
Nah, never sent it back.
All right.
And I spent many years actually collecting the games for the old Nintendo system, the original one that came out in the mid-'80s, the NES.
How many did you have there?
At my peak, I had maybe like 730 of the old Nintendo games. Yeah, that's right. I'm a nerd. And see, I was lucky enough, though. If you get on eBay these days looking to buy old games, the price, the collector's market has gone through the roof for these games. There's, games are hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And I started collecting back when you could go into, there was an old store called Funko Land, if anyone remembers. Funko Land. A used video game store. You can go in there with like a $20 bill and walk out with like 4 or 5 of the old NES games. So I was starting to amass my collection that way. And I came pretty damn close to having a complete U.S. NES collection. I've started sort of piecemealing, selling those off because, I'm married now and I have a kid, and my video game room is now my kid's room, and I'm paying to have all my NES games.
He keeps growing.
Storage unit, yeah. They don't stop that.
Yeah.
But I still have a pretty solid chunk of my NES collection at the moment. I think the one that is most valuable is, at least from a monetary point of view, there's a game called Little Samson nobody knows Little Samson because it came out way towards the end of the NES's lifespan. The
Taito game, right?
Yes, Taito, the people who made Space Invaders, made this game. It came out after the Super Nintendo, and the Genesis was already out, so people had moved on. So there's not many copies of this game in existence. They didn't sell many at all. That game, and I just have the cartridge. If I had the box and everything, it would be worth significantly more. But I think just the cartridge is probably worth like $1,300 or $1,400.
Jesus.
Right now.
Damn.
Yeah. So that will be on eBay at some point because at this point I could use $1,300 or $1,400 more than I could use a copy of Little Samson on hand 24/7.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you, just come from kind of a emotional sort of memory point of view. I like you, I'd gotten a lot of games signed, so I have Shigeru Miyamoto, the guy who created Mario, created Donkey Kong, created The Legend of Zelda. I have the original Zelda Gold cartridge with his signature on it, so I have that framed with his business card actually, because I got to interview him. So I can prank call him whenever I want. The poor dope.
Assuming the number's the same from 15 years ago.
Ask him to send you a Super Nintendo.
This is Phil from Digimons.
You guys said you'd send me a Super Nintendo.
I wanted to say, because when you said Shigeru Miyamoto, I heard someone say "wow," and that reminded me of. I'm going to tell this story. I've told it a couple times on the show before. But so CJ worked at EGM before I did. I got there a couple years, well, more than a couple years after you'd started. You started when you were like 10,
17.
But anyway, he was the news editor at the magazine. And the first E3 that I went to as part of EGM, Chris had set up all these interviews with various industry luminaries and asked if I wanted to come along. He's like, yeah, sure. Like, where are we going? Oh, we're going to go see Shigeru Miyamoto. And I'd never met anybody that amazing in my life from a game industry perspective. He's like, but you got to come in and you got to be part of the, you got to help with the interview. You got to be part of the conversation. It's like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. So we go into this room. There's Shigeru Miyamoto and his translator, and shake hands, say hello, and everything. And CJ starts the interview, and it's going really well. And then he tries to throw it at me, and I'm just sitting there like.
Greg's contribution to that interview was fill in the room with the smell of urine.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like I don't know.
Well, so Phil and I wrote for Game Now, which was the magazine that you read if you were on the shitter, and that was
nobody remembers Game Now.
Nobody read that one.
No.
So
it was the emergence about 2 years.
Yeah, we were never chosen first to get those kinds of interviews, but something fell through, and he and I actually did get a chance also to interview Miyamoto, but we had no time to prepare. So I do remember one of your questions, Phil, was, so what did you really think of the Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yeah.
Putting the poor guy on
the live action. And Shigeru Miyamoto, first of all, super sweet guy.
Super nice. Yeah.
Holy crap. Just the nicest guy. Very soft-spoken, very just creative, brilliant guy. And I was like in my mid-20s, so I'm being a jacket. What did you think of that shitty Super Mario movie that came out that sullied your creation's name? And just ever the gentleman though, he the translator did his duty, translated that stupid question to Japanese, asked it to him. He sits there and actually puts a little thought into it. He says something in Japanese to the translator, and the translator just says, they worked very hard on that movie. Which was as good an answer, I think.
The thing that kills me, too, is we didn't bring a recorder into that meeting, which is crazy.
It was such a last-minute thing.
But here's the big thing,
I know, right?
is that, there was one other question that we asked, and he gave, a 2.5-minute answer in Japanese, and then Bill Trinan, the guy who was translating, just translated to, no. What did he actually say?
Yeah, exactly.
Never know. You got to learn Japanese for that.
Yeah.
All right, I think we got to wrap it up.
Okay, let's say there's more talented podcasts coming up.
Yeah, so
don't worry. Don't worry.
Hope you've enjoyed this. We were the opening act, obviously, and our job was to make sure everyone behind us is funnier.
Yeah.
I think that'll work out.
I think we've succeeded.
Yes. So we're gonna do the outro now.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Well,
you're the host.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just start. You don't have to announce.
Yeah, you don't have to say.
How many years have you been doing?
I usually do that, so I have enough time in the editing. I can just snip.
Okay.
Like that.
The snippy clippy?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Alrighty, and that is our show for this week. Thank you very much for joining us here in Las Vegas, for those of you who did. If you got a question, comment, something we said you want clarification on, or want anything, you can tweet at us.
What?
Nude pics. If you ask nicely.
Okay.
We might
There's a picture of Phil circulating Twitter right now.
That's me rolling in money.
Decent proposal style.
Yeah.
You can direct that to @P1Podcast on the Twitters. We got one of them tweet things.
Twitter accounts.
Yeah. What you said. What do I say after this?
I don't. 10 fucking years and you don't have this outro memorized?
No.
I got my part memorized.
What else we got?
God, Mike, I'm sorry you drove.
It's like I drove 6 hours for this bullshit. No one paid for my gas money.
It's okay, Mike.
Remind Mike why he left the show the first time.
Yeah, you can direct that to @P1Podcast on the Twitters, or we got an internet website at player1podcast.com. You can go there. and read blog entries about Sega CD stuff from Mr. Greg Seward.
That's right.
And he does a podcast called Generation 16 as well, a vlog kind of thing with episodes. You can
Yeah,
get episodes of that too.
The YouTube thing. YouTube.com/Generation16.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't call those vlogs anymore?
No. And it's not a vlog anyway.
Okay. Well,
Man, oh man.
video series, Generation 16.
Yes.
You can get that at our website too. We got a message board. Is that where I go?
You
now?
nervous, CJ?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, message board. where
You
can
made it. You made it this whole show. You can do
I
it.
did. Well, now is the point in the outro where I normally talk about Scoopfest, and it's already happening.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Don't plug Scoopfest
I'm
now.
not gonna. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Plug Scoopfest 18.
Oh, Scoopfest 18
Yeah.
in 2018.
We don't know if we'll
maybe
be
we'll
there.
get asked back.
Yeah, I
doubt
think
it.
the odds are dipping
After
lower
this
and lower
extra.
as this outro goes on.
I feel like 10 minutes ago we might have been asked back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got a message board on that website as well where you can discuss this episode and any of our episodes with us and our other listeners.
Here's how professional does it. If you'd like to subscribe to the Player One Podcast, you can do so by visiting PlayerOnePodcast.com or by going to the iTunes Music Store. While you're at the iTunes Music Store, you can also invest $1.99.
Cheap.
To invest in the Player One Podcast iPhone application gives you one-touch communication with us via the emails, the Twitters, the what have you. We also have all of our episodes ready to stream right to your listening device. And hey, Android cell phone telephone users, the Player One Podcast iPhone application is available for your listening device as well for that same $1.99.
This is more obnoxious in person.
Thank you. Thank you. You can find that right over there at the Amazon Android Marketplace. We're also on Stitcher Radio. You can like us on Facebook. You can watch archives of our shows and watch us perform live when you're not in Vegas on the youtubes.com/P1podcast. We do that every week on Sundays typically. Follow our Twitter accounts to find out when we're doing our next live show. And if you've liked what you've heard,
And how could you?
you can head over to patreon.com/P1podcast. Throw a few shekels our way. It keeps us rolling in our gambling addictions when we come to Vegas. And you
Were
can
you
also
sitting in this posture the entire time?
It's got the man spread going.
The wide stance?
Yes.
How
Yes.
did I not notice that?
Keep your eye on the prize, buddy. That's
right.
why it's here.
I just put a little picture of Walter Matthau right
Beckoning you. Beckoning
Taunting me.
scares the children away.
It won't
but
stop looking at me.
welcomes those who are in the know. And you can also head over to generation-16.com where you can find a Patreon link to help support Greg Seward's outstanding, and it really is, Generation 16. If you like the Sega Genesis, I know we talked about Super Nintendo today, but if you are into Runners-Up, Second Bananas, you can enjoy a little talk about the Sega Genesis. Greg's doing a wonderful job with that. So how many episodes do you have right now of that show?
110?
110. He's going through, what he's doing is he's going through every Sega Genesis game chronologically. Just the U.S. releases?
No.
No, yeah, you're doing the whole library.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just talking about 5-10 minutes per game, just giving a little historical background. There's some really good information.
Bit of trivia, stuff like that. Go check it out.
It's a genuinely good series.
Yeah.
I don't like Greg very much, but I do support his show. CJ!
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting this mess. You know what? We don't normally do this on our show, but tell the folks sitting out in the crowd, where can people find you on the Twitters?
Oh, I am at SuperPack.
At SuperPack.
Still waiting for someone to pay me for that Twitter handle. Hasn't happened. SuperPac.
You named yourself after the game Super Pac-Man.
Yeah. Been my handle for 20 plus years.
Yeah, this is not a political based thing. This is just,
But I am awaiting an offer from any political.
You will sell out in a heartbeat.
Totally sell out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gregory!
Yo.
Thank you so much for joining us out here today. Where can everyone find you on the Twitters?
You can find me on Twitter at Seward, Sewart, and I'm going to plug real quick, Extra Life. I raise money for Extra Life every year. It's a video game-based charity for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. I've been raising money now for a few years, raised a little over $25,000.
Holy crap.
For the IWK Health Center in Halifax.
Yeah.
Thank you. Super important cause for me, and I'm doing it again this year, trying to raise $10,000 this year. So please, if you'd like to support, it's extra-life.org/Seward.
Participant/Seward.
Participant/Seward. Thank you.
There you go. Make that URL harder to remember.
Yes.
That'll help the sick kids.
I know. Yeah.
Ethan.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you.
You are very welcome.
Don't patronize me, you jackass. Where can everyone find you on the Twitters?
Twitter, you can find me at Ethan_Einhorn, EINHORN.
Excellent. And
just go on Twitter and look up uncapped spending. That's what you'll find.
Yeah, if you want to hear Ethan go on
about through the nose, out through the mouth.
How he hates free-to-play games, that's the way to go.
Sure.
Mike.
Sir.
Mike, my good friend Mike, who I
find myself genuinely mesmerized by your perineal area.
It's right there.
It's the Walter Matthau. I didn't notice that earlier on.
Yeah, you would have just maybe maneuver the mic so you can get a better view the whole time.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you again for driving. This guy drove 6 hours to come here to this.
In a row.
In a row. Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
My
again.
pleasure.
It's we miss Mike was on the show a couple years ago for a long time, and he left because he loves his family. He wanted to spend time with his family.
Yeah,
but that's
we'll see how it goes.
But it's a treat. It's a treat. Well, I hope your family life crumbles so you can come back to our show. But
I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Where can everyone find you on the Twitter?
I genuinely don't know what my Twitter handle is anymore.
No,
isn't it _Mike_Phillips?
There you go.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So you can tell how much he updates that. I'm of course Phil. You can find me on the Twitters at whimsicalphil, and I guess that's it for this week.
We'll do it again next week?
We'll do it again. We won't
not fly across the country
probably not do it here next week.
Yeah.
But
I think we should say thank you, Scoops, for being such a great audience.
Scoops, thank you for joining us. We hope you liked our putting up with our bullshit for a little while, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Scoopfest. So stick around. Like we said, there's a lot of great,
a lot of better shows coming up.
A lot of better shows coming up. So thanks
thank
again.
Give it up.
Thank you.
Now comes the awkward moment where y'all stand there and watch us walk out.
Let's get it for these guys.